2:14 a.m., March 17, 2026, Hialeah, Florida. 18 federal agents moved in 2 columns along the east wall of a converted gymnasium on West 68th Street. No lights, no sirens, radios on mute. The building had been listed as closed since January. Permits on file, a laminated notice on the front door, renovation en progress, no intwi. The sign had been there for 11 weeks. Behind it, 9 children. Cumulative ransom paid by 9 families across Miami-Dade County, $214,000, collected in rotating Cash App handles every 2 weeks in exchange for weekly proof-of-life audio messages sent through WhatsApp. The break in this case didn't come from a wiretap. It didn't come from a tip line, a confidential informant, a surveillance drone, or a cross-agency task force. It came from a software engineer in Coral Gables who took screenshots of his payment confirmations and ran them through a reverse lookup tool at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night in February. What he found on his laptop screen that night set off a federal operation involving the FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and a joint tactical team that had less than 72 hours to move before their window closed. This is what happened inside that gym. The facility at 4820 West 68th Street in Hialeah had operated under the name Apex Youth Athletics and Learning Center since late 2023. On paper, it was a licensed dual-purpose facility, youth sports training in the mornings, tutoring and homework help in the afternoons. It served kids aged 6 to 14, primarily from working-class families in Hialeah, Opa-locka, and the northwestern edges of Miami-Dade County. Enrolled families paid a monthly membership fee. Staff held current youth certification credentials. Inspection records were clean. The facility had no violations on file with Miami-Dade County. In January 2026, the center filed renovation permits with the city. The paperwork was routine. HVAC replacement, flooring upgrade, fire suppression system upgrade. Expected completion, 8 to 10 weeks. Families were notified. The children were told to stay home. The facility went dark. Or it appeared to. What was actually happening inside the building during those 11 weeks would not become clear until federal agents breached the rear service entrance on a Tuesday morning in the middle of March. The ransom ring operated through a structure that was, in retrospect, almost methodical. 9 children. 9 separate families. All had been members of the gym. All received the same type of contact. An unexpected WhatsApp voice message on a Sunday evening from a number they didn't recognize, containing a short recording of their child's voice, followed by a digitally altered adult voice reading a set of instructions. The instructions were consistent across all 9 families, with minor variations. Do not contact law enforcement. Do not contact the school. Do not discuss this with anyone outside your immediate household. Each week, a payment amount would be sent via a separate message. The payment handle, a Venmo username or a Cash App cash tag, would be valid for 2 weeks only, then replaced. Payments ranged from $800 to $2,400 per week, depending on the family. The families complied. For weeks. The reasons were not hard to understand. Several of the families were undocumented or had undocumented relatives. Others had prior interactions with local law enforcement that had not gone well. The kidnappers had clearly studied their targets. The instruction to avoid 911 hit hardest for the families least likely to call it. For those families, the FBI wasn't a guaranteed rescue. It was another unknown. Paying felt like control. Paying felt like the only move they had. And so the money moved. Week after week, through rotating handles, from 9 households in Hialeah, Opa-locka, Homestead, and Coral Gables into accounts that vanished and reappeared on a 2-week cycle. 7 of the 9 families never cross-referenced notes. They were told not to talk to each other. They didn't. The 8th family kept quiet too. The 9th family had a software engineer. His name, in court documents, is listed only as Cooperating Witness 1. He was 34 years old, originally from Colombia, a naturalized U.S. citizen employed in back-end infrastructure at a mid-sized tech company in Brickell. His daughter had been enrolled at Apex Youth Athletics since September 2025. She was 9 years old. He received his first WhatsApp contact on January 19, 2026, a Sunday evening, just after 8 p.m. The message contained a 14-second audio clip. His daughter's voice, reading what sounded like a prepared sentence. She was okay, she was being taken care of, and he needed to follow instructions. Then the altered voice. Then the payment information. he paid. Like the others, he paid. For 6 weeks straight, he sent money to whatever handle appeared in his Sunday messages. But he also did something none of the other families had done. He screenshotted everything. Every message, every payment confirmation, every receipt. He wasn't sure why, exactly. He said later it was instinct, the kind of thing you do when you're staring at something that doesn't feel right and you don't know yet what you're going to do about it. He kept the screenshots in a separate encrypted folder on his phone and said nothing to anyone. By the 6th week, he had accumulated 18 screenshots of payment confirmations across 3 different Cash App cash tags. On the evening of February 28th, he opened those screenshots on his laptop and ran them through a reverse lookup tool he had access to through his work, a device fingerprinting utility used in fraud detection for mobile transactions. He wasn't certain it would work. He ran it anyway. It worked. All 3 Cash App handles, 3 different names, 3 different account usernames, registered on 3 different dates, resolved to the same device fingerprint, the same physical smartphone, different accounts, different labels, different 2-week rotation windows, same phone. He sat with that result for approximately 4 minutes. Then he drove to the FBI field office on Northwest 2nd Avenue in Miami. Not because he was certain it would help, because he couldn't think of anything else to do at 11:47 p.m. with a laptop screenshot showing 3 fake identities linked to the same device that had his daughter. The duty agent who processed his walk-in that night had spent the previous 3 years assigned to the Cyber Division's Financial Fraud Task Force. She looked at the screenshots. She looked at the device fingerprint output. She asked him 2 questions, confirmed his daughter's name against the Apex Youth Athletics Enrollment Database, and pulled the on-call supervisor. By 1 a.m. on March 1st, the FBI's Miami field office had opened a kidnapping investigation. The device fingerprint from the Coral Gables father's screenshots was cross-referenced within 12 hours against a database maintained by Homeland Security Investigations. HSI had flagged the same device ID 18 months earlier in connection with a separate identity fraud investigation in Broward County, a case involving fraudulent rental agreements and fake identification documents. That investigation had been closed without charges when the primary subject became unreachable. The device was registered to a prepaid carrier account. The carrier account had been opened using a driver's license issued in 2022 to a man named in immigration records with 2 prior voluntary departure orders, one from 2019, one from 2021. Both times he had been encountered at or near the southern border and released with a notice to appear. Neither notice had resulted in a court appearance. He had been in the Miami-Dade area since at least mid-2024, based on cell tower pings associated with the device. He had an address on file, a short-term rental in the Westchester neighborhood of Miami that turned out to be a unit rented under a different name and vacated approximately 3 weeks before the FBI traced it. What they did find at that address, a stack of prepaid SIM cards still in their packaging, a whiteboard with what appeared to be a calendar grid, some cells marked with dollar amounts, others with letters that didn't immediately correspond to anything, a printer and a laminating machine. I spent time going through what the case file describes about that apartment, and one detail kept nagging me: the laminating machine. Whoever ran this operation had printed and laminated the renovation in progress sign posted on the gym door. That sign was still there when SWAT hit the building in March. Whoever made it had assumed the operation would be over by then, or hadn't planned that far. Neither possibility is comforting. The FBI established surveillance on the Apex facility within 48 hours of opening the investigation. The building appeared inactive from the exterior. No foot traffic. No vehicles parked in the lot overnight. The lights were off. The renovation permit was legitimate. The HVAC contractor had actually done preliminary work inside during the first 2 weeks of January before being told to pause pending a materials delay. The materials delay was fake. The contractor never returned. By mid-January, the facility was under the control of the ransom group. The perimeter revealed something agents hadn't initially anticipated: a rear service entrance opening to a narrow alley behind the building, accessible from a side street 2 blocks over. Thermal imaging on the second night of surveillance picked up heat signatures inside the building inconsistent with an empty structure. Multiple warm zones concentrated in the northwest quadrant, which corresponded on the building layout to a converted equipment storage room and 2 locker areas. 9 warm signatures. The FBI did not move immediately. Moving immediately, with incomplete intelligence on how many subjects were inside and what the internal layout looked like, risked the exact outcome they were trying to prevent. Standard kidnapping protocol in multi-victim, occupied structure scenarios requires time to build out the tactical picture. entry points, suspect positions, victim positions, and the sequence in which any breach would unfold. They had approximately 72 hours before their surveillance window started carrying risk of exposure. 3 obstacles hit the team in those 72 hours. The first, the building's original floor plans, obtained through the city permit office, showed an interior layout that did not match what thermal imaging suggested. At some point in the previous 2 years, interior walls had been modified. The equipment storage room shown on the 2019 plans was approximately half the size of the heat signature cluster. Someone had knocked through a wall. Agents pulled the renovation permit files for every address associated with the principal subject and the facility's registered ownership chain over the previous 3 years. They were looking for any licensed contractor who might have touched that building's interior after the original HVAC work stalled. What they found instead was a pattern. 2 of the permit applications filed under the facility's ownership chain listed the same contractor license number, a number that, when cross-checked against state licensing records, corresponded to a license suspended in 2023 for documentation irregularities. The work had been permitted. The permit was real. The contractor behind it was not operating legally. That detail went into the briefing package that evening and added a line to the investigative thread. Someone with both construction access and a willingness to operate in the gray margin had modified the interior of that building. That person was not on the suspect list yet. The second obstacle was the Sunday voice note. Every Sunday evening, the families received a new WhatsApp audio clip, proof of life, combined with updated payment instructions for the next cycle. March 15th was a Sunday. If agents moved before then, they'd be racing against a clock they couldn't see. If they waited, the families would be forced to send another week's payment. And there was no guarantee the payment cycle wouldn't trigger something unexpected. A move, a location change, a reaction to a missed payment. The decision was made to let March 15th pass. The voice notes went out as expected that Sunday evening. All 9 families reported receiving them. Payments were expected by Tuesday. The third obstacle was the most direct. On the afternoon of March 16th, the day before the planned entry, one of the surveillance agents noted a vehicle parked in the alley behind the facility for approximately 40 minutes. A white panel van, no plates visible from the angle of the camera. The van left. They were unable to confirm whether it was connected to the operation or a coincidence. The tactical briefing that evening added a note to the operational plan, assumed the possibility of additional subjects beyond those confirmed by thermal imaging. Entry teams adjusted. By 1:30 a.m. on March 17th, 4 teams were in position around the Apex Youth Athletics building, the primary entry team at the rear service door, a secondary team on the north exterior wall, 2 additional units at the front entrance and the roof access hatch. 18 agents total, not counting the 4-vehicle perimeter unit staged 2 blocks out. Put yourself in the entry team leader's position for a second. It's 2 a.m., you have 9 children inside a building whose interior walls have been illegally modified. Your floor plan is 18 months out of date, and you have possible additional suspects you cannot confirm or locate. Every variable you trained for is active simultaneously. The entry took 11 seconds from breach to first verbal contact with a suspect. The rear service door had a commercial deadbolt. It was cut. The team moved through a short utility corridor along the east wall of the main gym floor. The corridor was narrow, 2 agents wide, single file under the low conduit runs that lined the ceiling. The agents moved in near total darkness, relying on the green ambient wash of night vision optics. The gym itself was empty, equipment stacked against one wall, the floor bare. They moved northwest. 2 suspects were on the gym floor. Both were seated near a folding table, a laptop open between them. Neither was armed at the time of contact. Both were taken to the floor within 3 seconds of the team's entry call. The converted storage room was 40 feet further, past 2 sets of locker room doors. Both locker room areas were empty. The storage room door had 2 external padlocks, keyed separately. A set of keys was found on one of the suspects on the floor behind them. The door opened at 2:21 a.m. 9 children, ages 7 to 14. 3 were asleep on foam mattresses. The others were awake, some standing, some sitting against the far wall. The room measured approximately 22 by 30 feet. It had a single overhead fluorescent light, a chemical toilet in the corner, and a stack of water bottles along one wall. A folding table held remnants of what appeared to be fast food containers. The HVAC ductwork that had been listed as pending repair ran along the ceiling. Intact, functional. The room was warm. All 9 children were malnourished. None showed acute physical injuries. The youngest, 7 years old, did not initially respond verbally to agents. She had been in the facility for 19 weeks. 19 weeks. She had been taken before the facility officially announced its renovation closure. She had been inside that building since October 2025. Here's what this tells us about the operation. Whoever ran this ring had planned for a long timeline. This wasn't an improvised grab. The 19-week window for the youngest child means her captivity began in the weeks before the facility went dark publicly, before the permits were filed, before the renovation sign went up. She was taken first, quietly, before the pattern was established. The renovation story didn't come first. The child came first. The renovation came second, as cover for what was already underway. That changes the picture of how this ring thought. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. 2 suspects were arrested on the gym floor at initial breach. A third was found in a bathroom off the utility corridor, unarmed, apparently asleep. A fourth was located in a vehicle parked around the corner from the facility, identified through the vehicle's registration. The white panel van from the previous afternoon's surveillance was found 3 blocks away, parked legally, unoccupied. A 5th suspect was not at the scene. Agents identified him within the hour through documents recovered from the folding table, a burner phone, a notebook with contact information, and a partial ledger that appeared to track payment cycles. Cross-referencing the name against travel records, HSI flagged a departure alert. The 5th suspect had checked in for a 6:15 a.m. Spirit Airlines flight at Miami International Airport. Flight destination, Guatemala City. He was taken at the gate at 5:09 a.m. by a 2-agent team from HSI. He was carrying $4,200 in cash and 3 prepaid cell phones. All 5 suspects were in federal custody by 6 a.m. The children were transported to a secure medical facility for evaluation. FBI victim specialists and trauma-certified medical personnel were on site before the first transport vehicle arrived. 8 of the 9 children were assessed and released to family members within 24 hours. The 7th child, a 12-year-old boy who had been in the facility for 14 weeks, was admitted for nutritional support and remained under medical care for 4 days. The 9 families had paid a combined $214,000 over the course of the operation. Based on the payment ledger recovered at the scene, approximately $187,000 of that had been distributed or moved. The distribution mechanism was not immediately clear from the ledger alone. $27,000 in cash was recovered inside the facility. The remaining $187,000 was not recovered at the scene. What do you think? Did the system fail these 9 families before it ever had a chance to help them? 8 of the 9 complied with the instruction to avoid 911 for weeks. Some had legal reasons to fear that call. Others didn't, but feared it anyway. Who doesn't call law enforcement in a crisis isn't random. It's the product of years of experience. That's worth sitting with. The 5 suspects were charged federally under statutes covering kidnapping, extortion, conspiracy, and immigration violations. The lead suspect, the individual connected to the HSI fraud investigation from 2022, faced additional charges related to identity fraud and document forgery. Federal prosecutors filed the initial complaint on March 19, 2026. One detail that stuck with me: the partial ledger found on the folding table at the facility. It tracked 9 columns, 1 per child, identified by initials, with weekly entries showing payment amounts received and a running total. The column for the 7-year-old girl began in October. The last entry in her column, dated the week before the raid, showed a cumulative total of $31,600 received from her family over 19 weeks. $31,600 for 19 weeks. From a family that had been paying for their 7-year-old daughter. There's a line in the indictment that reads almost like fiction, and then you remember it isn't. It describes the youngest child's condition at time of rescue as consistent with prolonged nutritional restriction and psychological isolation. Clinical language. Precise. It doesn't describe what that looks like on a 7-year-old at 2 a.m. when a stranger in body armor opens a padlocked door. The forensic accounting team attached to the case spent several weeks tracing the payment flows from the 9 families through the rotating Cash App and Venmo handles. What they found complicated the picture. The handles didn't feed into a single account or a small cluster of accounts. They fed into a network of more than 40 distinct accounts across at least 6 platforms, many of them opened in the names of real individuals whose identifying information had been used without their knowledge. The same identity fraud mechanism HSI had flagged 18 months earlier in Broward County. The money moved fast and in small increments, structured to stay beneath automatic reporting thresholds. It aggregated at a middle layer of accounts, then moved again. Some of it to cryptocurrency wallets, some to international wire transfers, some to cash withdrawals spread across multiple ATMs over multiple days. The trail was not clean. Some of it broke off entirely. Here's the take that will probably get us some pushback. The 5 arrests at this scene were real, and the children were rescued, and those outcomes matter. But the $187,000 that moved through 40 accounts and disappeared into a crypto wallet and a series of wire transfers, that didn't come from nowhere. That infrastructure was not built by 5 men running a ransom operation out of a closed gym in Hialeah. The distribution network for those funds was more sophisticated than the operation itself. That gap in sophistication is either explained by outside support that was never prosecuted or by a network that was larger than what the arrests covered. Neither the FBI nor HSI publicly addressed that discrepancy. The 4 suspects arrested at the scene entered federal custody pending arraignment. The 5th, arrested at Miami International, was held without bail on the grounds that he had demonstrated active flight risk. He was boarding a plane. His attorney filed a motion contesting the characterization. The motion was denied. The preliminary hearing produced one significant development. A 6th name surfaced in the evidentiary record, not present at the scene, not on any flight manifest. A name found in the burner phone recovered from the table. A contact listed without a surname, referenced in a series of texts that appeared to discuss facility access, timing, and the last group. Investigators understood this reference to potentially indicate that the 9 children rescued in March were not the first group held in the facility, or that additional locations had been considered. That line of investigation was noted in the public record. No arrest followed. As of the filing of the federal complaint, the identity associated with the 6th name remained unconfirmed and the individual unlocated. There were more threads here than 5 people could have held. The Apex Youth Athletics facility was sealed by federal order on March 17th and remained under FBI jurisdiction as an active crime scene for the following 3 weeks. During that period, forensic teams documented the full extent of the internal modifications. The knocked-through wall, the enlarged storage room, additional reinforcement added to the door frame that had housed the padlocks. The modifications had been made carefully. The work looked professional, not improvised. Someone with construction knowledge had worked on that room. That person was not among the 5 in custody. By May 2026, federal prosecutors had filed a superseding indictment expanding the charges and naming 2 additional defendants whose identities had emerged from the financial investigation and from digital forensics on the seized phones. One of those defendants was taken into custody in Broward County in April. The other remained at large as of the filing date. Are these networks going to keep operating in some form? Comment yes or no, because the answer isn't as obvious as it should be. The Miami field office's joint press release, issued on March 19th, described the operation as the result of cooperation between the FBI and Homeland Security investigations and credited the tip-off to an unnamed civilian who had provided critical technical evidence. The civilian. The software engineer from Coral Gables was not publicly named, per standard bureau practice in ongoing investigations. His daughter came home on March 17th. She was 9 years old. She had been inside the Apex building for 8 weeks. The 7-year-old who had been there since October was home by March 18th. Her mother gave a brief statement, through an interpreter, to local news. She said she had not understood, at first, that she was paying a ransom. She thought she was paying a fee. The first WhatsApp message had been framed that way. A required deposit to continue her daughter's enrollment in a separate enrichment program paid directly to avoid processing delays. By the time the framing shifted and the threat became explicit, she had already paid 4 times. 4 weeks in, she didn't know how to stop. The device that connected everything, the single smartphone fingerprint behind 3 rotating Cash App accounts, was never recovered. Investigators believe it was destroyed or disposed of before the raid. The SIM cards found in the Westchester apartment had been wiped. The software engineer's reverse lookup output, preserved in screenshots, remained the only direct technical link between the rotating payment accounts and a single physical device. Without that evidence, there was no thread to pull. Without that thread, the Sunday voice notes might have continued. The families might have kept paying. 9 families, $214,000, 19 weeks for 1 child. And the entire case hung on one man deciding, at 11 p.m. on a February Tuesday, to run his payment screenshots through a fraud detection tool he happened to have access to from his day job. Most people would have just looked at the screenshots. He ran them. The network connected to the Hialeah facility. The financial infrastructure, the 6th name in the burner phone, the person who reinforced the storage room door, has not been fully dismantled. The 5 defendants in federal custody are part of what was operating in that building. What was operating behind the building, moving the money and building the accounts, remains only partially visible. The children are home. The demand that created this operation still exists. The infrastructure that processed $187,000 through 40 accounts and left most of it unrecovered didn't dissolve when the padlocks came off that door. Subscribe if you don't want to miss what comes next, because the financial trail in this case is not finished. There's an ongoing federal investigation that, as of July 2026, has not produced a full public accounting of where that money went or who built the account network that moved it. There are 2 defendants in that network whose cases are still pending. There is a 6th contact whose name is in the record and whose location is not. The raid on March 17, 2026, ended at 2:21 a.m. when the storage room door opened. The case did not end there.